Today on the bench we have an old classic. And actually it's not the classic model, it is a classic. What we have here is a original Cobra 29. So this is, pretty much the radio that's started it all for that model line. It's the original, so it's 23 channel. Absolutely nothing, inside it's absolutely nothing like the later 40 channel radios, because this is a crystal synthesized radio where the Cobra 29 that pretty much everybody else is familiar with is a PLL synthesized. Very good radios. Matter of fact, they built a reputation as being good, economically priced radios, considering the time frame. I mean, these things were, by today's standards, you'd probably consider this a holy shit expensive radio. But back in the day, all radios were expensive. People complain and often seem to forget how much radios used to cost back in the 70s. They weren't cheap, and before that, they were even more expensive. Nowadays, most people are used to, how I can pick up a radio for, less than a day's wages. Well, back in the day, you might be paying a couple weeks' wages, a month's wages, or, hell, if you were getting one of the high-end base stations, hell, you could be paying a year's wages to buy a damn radio. Well, maybe not that much, but you get my point. They weren't cheap. The radios cost more back then than they do today. And that's not accounting for inflation. The actual sales price of radios like this back in the day, Cobra 29 is a perfect example. This Cobra 29 cost more in 1976 money than it does today if you walk in the store to buy a Cobra 29. But electronics was just more expensive back then. For starters, they were built a little bit better quality. Now, just like the later versions of the Cobra 29, this was built basically by Uniden, so it has a Uniden chassis in it. Fairly obvious. You look at the transformers, they all have Uniden stamped in the top of them. Circuit board's got Uniden printed right in the middle of it. And like I say, it is crystal synthesized, so you have some oscillator crystals here, but here's your... Move the camera back just a hair.
Hey, look good up there.
Turn the volume down here a little bit.
I appreciate it. Hey, look good back to K-Road.
So you can hear the...
I come down through town, and it's moving good. There's a wreck out there on 81 to 59 going south, so must be pretty bad. The closed route,
so you can hear it works just fine. But it's crystal synthesized, so unlike the radios, earlier radios than this would have used pairs of crystals, a receive and transmit crystal for every channel. They finally figured out how to do crystal synthesis, where they mix two different frequencies together to come up with the frequencies needed. This has a lot less crystals, and it can do all 23 channels without using 46 crystals. But they're good radios, built like a tank, about the same build quality as the later Cobra 29s. I wouldn't say it's any better. It's about the same quality. This one, like I say, is in really nice physical condition. Replaced the electrolytic capacitors, which there's only, I don't know, maybe 17 or 18 in here. It's not like modern day radios that have a lot of ICs in them. That's one thing. A lot of times you'll see a lot of electrolytic capacitors. You'll usually see a cluster of electrolytic caps around all major solid state components. Especially like integrated circuits, you'll usually see a couple filter caps there, and so it has a lot less in this. So actually IC wise, there's one SIP package, and that's it. Yeah, there's only the one single inline package one here. Not as many electrolytic capacitors. So those have been replaced. Did an alignment on it. Receives good. Now it does still have one problem, and it's a shame because, like I say, man, this radio's in such nice condition, and that is the meter. You can see the radio's in just beautiful condition, but the meter, it was stuck. I did get the needle unstuck, which just that alone is a bit of a pain in the butt. You have to pull the faceplate. Well, it's not the plate, because all of these controls actually mount to, the face is all one piece of plastic. And these are screwed to this, but you have to take the 4 screws off the side, pull it out. You have to remove the volume control, pull the meter light out, and then you can get the piece of tape off to get down into the set screw, the pivot screw for the needle. Was able to get down in there, dissolve the Loctite on it, got it loosened up, and then I could see the needle actually moving. If you tap the radio, the needle flutters back and forth a little bit. But unfortunately, it's apparently also burned out. Because even once I got the needle unstuck, it won't do anything. So, and what really sucks about these is that meter is a part of the radio. And I don't mean, it's a part in the radio. Yeah, it's pretty much a part of the radio. I say that because the way they installed these blasted things, there's no screw, there's no bracket, there's no glue. They just stuck it in the hole. They take, for lack of better terms, basically a soldering iron, and they melt the plastic on the faceplate and the sides of the meter case, and they fuse it together. So it's melted into the faceplate. So it's pretty much a permanent fixture in there. I assume you could get it out, but the problem is finding a good replacement meter, because this is not the standard meters like they use today. It's a completely different meter housing. So it's not like you could take one out of a modern Cobra 29 or the later 40-channel PLL synthesized radios and stick it in here. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. But what are you going to do? It is what it is. Now it doesn't have an SWR meter, so it's not like you're going to miss that. I've got high SWRs. It's only a receive and transmit meter. And quite honestly, me personally, when I use radios, I never use that. I turn the radio on, I never look at the signal meter. I can either hear a person or I can't. And they can either hear me or they can't. So, but it's still a good working radio. Now, a lot of people would ask, 23 channel, what good is it? As I always say, this radio is perfectly usable, as usable today as it was back in the day. Now, it doesn't do all 40 channels, but, if you're putting it in a car for mobile communications, there's nothing wrong with that. The major, you just taught her, matter of fact, it's on channel 19 right now. I had to look. It was on channel 19. That's what the truckers still use today. And around here, in the evening, now everybody's talking on base stations at home at night, but around here in the evening, the popular channels to talk on are 12 and 17. This radio does those. If you like listening to the Super Bowl or talking on the Super Bowl, this radio does that. So, you start getting up into the higher channels. A lot of that's what people are talking sideband on anyhow. This isn't a sideband radio, so you don't really need the really high channels anyhow, because like I say, people are talking on lower sideband up there. So, like I say, it's perfectly usable today. That's why even myself personally, now this is a customer's radio, but that's why even me personally myself, I still use old radios. I've got some old, 1, 3, 5 channel CBs, the old, tube types, that did not use crystal mixing. They just, they had a separate receive and transmit crystal. So, you have, if it's a 3-channel radio, it's got 6 crystals in it. If it's a 5-channel radio, it's got 10 crystals. And that's why they only put so many channels in them, because they knew most people weren't going to go out and buy 46 crystals to fully populate a radio. But hell, I still use those. I pick the channels I want, say 12, 17, and 19, pop 3 sets of crystals in. It works just fine. And it's a classic, like I say. And this one is, this is without a doubt the longest running, I don't know, I'd probably go even farther than to say the longest running series of a model number of not just CBs, but probably any electronic device ever invented by man. Honestly, if you think about it, name one other electronic device that still has the same model number today as it did back in the mid-70s. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was made back in the mid-70s that still is made with the same model number today. Because, like I say, you walk into the your local truck stop, or hell, probably Walmart, or stores like that. Go online, eBay, wherever you want to buy one. You can buy Cobra 29 today. Now, granted, completely different radio, but it's still a Cobra 29. But once Cobra built a reputation as a decent radio, and that's the thing. It's not the most. It wasn't the most absolutely nowhere close to the most expensive radio back then. It was a good general purpose radio. It was meant to be somewhat budget minded, but still be a good performing radio, and that's exactly what you have. It is a good working radio. They receive and transmit well. And they built their reputation on that. And look where it got them. They're about the only radio manufacturer left. I mean, you couldn't count back in the 70s all of the radio manufacturers on your hands and or on all your fingers and toes. Nowadays, hell, you can the radio companies that survived, the collapse of the CB boom. Hell, you can count all them on one hand now. So yeah. But there you go. There's just a peek inside the classic. Like I say, it's the original, the granddaddy of Cobra 29s. And just if you're wondering, that's the final transistor there. Yes, that's didn't use a 2078 or anything like they use nowadays. Driver transistor here, and the final that's actually the final transistor right there. So yeah, they used a different package style, and actually a lot of radios back in this vintage, the drivers would have been this style, and the finals would have been this style of transistor. So they, don't be surprised if you ever get an old 23 channel solid state radio and you see, you're trying to find a final transistor. Yeah, it's not going to look, well, hell, actually all of them are the old metal tab style. Bent metal tabs, but it's not going to be, let me reach over here and grab something. They're not going to look like this. These are very similar. I mean, from here down, they look the same, but the top on those, the metal's a little bit thinner, and it actually comes up, bends back, and goes back up. That's meant to act as the heat sink, and then also hold the base actually doesn't touch. It's only the tab that actually is attached to the heat sinks on those. But, yeah, like I say, early solid-state radio, and like I say, basically Cobra built their reputation on this radio, and hey, they must have done something right, because like I say, they're one of the few the remaining few that survived the collapse of the CB boom, and this was, probably one of the reasons was this series of radio, the 29. So there you go. You don't see a lot of these because, yeah, it's not a Browning, it's not a Tram, it's not some oddball rare radio. It's probably the most it's probably one of the most manufactured radios in history, the Cobra 29s. But like I say, this is the originator, the granddaddy of all the modern night watches and sound trackers, and with Weather Channel, LX models, the Dale Earnhardt or Army specials, you name they all trace their heritage back to this chassis right here, the original crystal synthesized one. So there you go, just a quick peek.